Hey y'all, welcome to All in Wisconsin's Fourth Amendment Business presentation. My name is Kyle, and I am the Community Resilience Director at All In, and I'm joined by my colleague David.
Hey, everybody. Really happy to be here. I serve as the Narrative Resilience Director with All In, and we're really excited to talk to you about Fourth Amendment businesses today. So, a little bit about All In Wisconsin before we get started. All In is the organization at the forefront of community power in Wisconsin. What began as our state's race class narrative hub in 2020 has grown into the engine that powers our movement from Kenosha to Superior by building a system grounded in shared identity, common values, and collective struggles. We are the architects of Wisconsin's narrative, the catalyst for its organizing future, and the safe harbor for its communities fighting for their rights of freedom, safety, justice, and joy. And Wonder, or the Wisconsin Unity Network for Democracy Resilience, is a rapidly growing project of All In, focused on building movement power to restore democracy beyond voting to protect our communities. We bring people into organizing to shift power dynamics and improve community conditions. We listen to our people's needs and steward resources so that they're best prepared to organize together and foster joy in collective action.
And so David mentioned a few of, or all of our pillars, and I just want to highlight in particular that freedom, safety, and justice and joy are, they are everything that we do. They're our North Stars. These pillars represent not just our values, but our outcomes that we aim to achieve in all our efforts. And so I'm just going to run through each one of these definitions. So freedom is the ability to live authentically as a whole person without fear or limitations and be liberated from societal constraints, oppressive systems, trauma, and harm. Safety to us is the ability to live freely and confidently, enjoying everyday activities while expressing oneself without fear of retribution, harm, judgment, persecution, or retribution. Justice is the ability to rely on community based approaches that address harm, prioritize restoration, and ensure safety and accountability, as well as compassion. And joy, and this is our favorite, is the sense of belonging and freedom to be fully present, surrounded by community, culture, music, art, dancing, laughter, and shared experiences that celebrate connection, creativity, and the magic of being with our people. We're going to keep moving.
Thank you, Kyle. And that brings us to the topic of our presentation today, which is Fourth Amendment businesses, which we like to call FABs. So the FAB initiative of All in Wisconsin's seeks to ensure that businesses are safe places to work and our communities are safe places to raise our families. We know that our country can't work if our small businesses are constantly losing employees and customers to the fear of or to actual ICE detentions. Now, there are the strategies to counter threats to immigrant workers actually encompass 5 areas: ICE community arrests, ICE workplace arrests, which is what the FAB program seeks to mitigate, ICE jail arrests, worker retaliation, and eviction after an ICE detention. So, this program and the toolkits that go with it focus on number 2, which is building Fourth Amendment workplaces to mitigate ICE workplace arrests. And I want to say up top that this program and the guides that go with it were inspired and heavily grounded in the good work being done all across our country by a lot of organizations, but most specifically including Siembra, North Carolina, who is an early leader in Fourth Amendment workplace training, organizing, and recruitment. And we were really lucky to have their foundation to bring to Wisconsin.
And so we're going to talk a little about why is the Fourth Amendment important? Why are we organizing these fabs? And how to become a fab? Um, but before then, we want to talk a little bit about Fourth Amendments and what we are going to train folks on, which is how to interact with federal agents, how to safeguard employees in the event of unconstitutional entry by federal agents, and how to avoid revealing private information about employees. So, the Fourth Amendment is important for a lot of different reasons. But in this context, it's because many federal agents who have participated in workplace immigration arrests in 2025 have not identified themselves when they first approach or show a warrant signed by a judge. All law enforcement agents from any agency are required under the Fourth Amendment to demonstrate a valid search or arrest warrant signed by a judge that shows the specific name and address of the person under investigation before being granted entry to a private area of any residence or establishment. And so, with that being said, we're organizing these FABs because unconstitutional searches have taken place in Newark, Memphis, Tupper Lake, New York, Kansas City, Spring, Texas, Kennett Square, PA, Minnesota, and many other places. Around the country, workers and workplaces are organizing to enforce their rights because these arrests are disrupting local economies, forcing some businesses to shut their doors, and hundreds of workers' families to suffer the sudden loss of a primary income earner and caregiver. The harsh reality is that thousands of workplaces depend on over 30 million foreign born workers and on the 48 million foreign born consumers who spend over $1.7 trillion dollars and pay $652 billion dollars in taxes. Illegal searches and seizures undermine public safety and might lead federal agencies to expand their warrantless incursions into our private lives and further erode our constitutional rights. There are efforts ranging from Ohio to Texas to Massachusetts to Washington state, and now right here in Wisconsin. So let's talk a little bit about how to become a FAB. Well, first, we need our employers to sign our statement of support. That pledge lets us know more about them and what materials and trainings the workplace needs to become an official Fourth Amendment workplace. So, Fourth Amendment workplaces would post a Fourth Amendment business sign, and you can ask us to help produce your design, host a short all staff training, create a federal engagement protocol, create protocols for keeping applicable doors closed and locked, installing locks on doors separating public and private areas or entry exit doors, as well as installing doors to create durable separation between public and private areas.
And so that leads us to the next question. What can FABs even do? FABs can take steps to implement new security protocols to limit unconstitutional entry by federal agents. They can host all staff trainings to make sure all employees know what their rights are and how to protect them. They can publicize their support, which signals to staff, patrons, and the wider community that their workplace is opposed to unconstitutional entry by federal agents and how that's integral to the shared values and social fabric of their community. And arguably most importantly, they can recruit other workplaces to participate. Like so much in organizing, there are strength in numbers.
And so this is a example of a sign designed by David, who's a really talented graphic designer. And we know we wanted to meet the need in a very concrete way. And a lot of times, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's a food truck, a cafe, a bookstore, we know these are small business owners. These are mom and pop shops, and the margins can be so thin. And so, in order to meet that concrete moment, we want to we wanted to and are taking on um, the impetus to design and create and provide the signs free of charge, whether you're in Milwaukee, whether you're in Baraboo, whether you're in Kenosha, whether you're in Ashland. We want to make sure that folks don't have to worry about money being an issue, money being a factor, but also we want to create a shared image that when you walk into a store somewhere in Milwaukee, whether it's Stone Creek Coffee or to grab a taco, you can see that this is a shared network of folks who are standing up for their rights and that you're able to patronize businesses that fully believe in our ability to have our constitutional rights unencumbered and unimpeded. So if you need a sign or if you're interested in a sign, you'll be able to reach out to David or myself, and we'll be able to help get that process started of creating a design for you and your city.
For FAB employees, we spoke a little bit earlier when talking about all staff training, how important it is that they know their rights. Well, here are the 6 key rights that we lay out in our program and our training documents. The first is the right to remain silent. Employees don't have to share information with federal agents about which staff are present, their immigration status, or country of origin. They don't have to disclose any information. As with any law enforcement agency, they have the right to remain silent. That means no one needs to show them ID, employee records, time cards, etc. FAB employees have the right to restrict access. Employees can say that they're prohibited from granting entry until the arrival of a designated staff point person or consultation with legal counsel. They have the right to refuse access to private areas and to refuse requests to open locked doors. FAB employees have the right to decline a search. They can review any warrants they provide, but no matter what, employees do not have to consent to a search. FAB employees have the right to request counsel. Employees can decline to answer any questions and state that company policy is for legal counsel to review any warrants before access is granted. Employees have the right to record. They have the right to record any interactions with federal agents and to release surveillance footage later. And finally, the right to inform. Employees have the right to alert all present to the presence of federal agents and to broadcast information about how staff and patrons can protect their Fourth Amendment rights. And while we like to make sure that everyone knows their rights and we encourage them to exercise them in these moments, we also feel it's important to talk about the choices that can be made that put FAB employees in legal jeopardy. These are things we don't encourage doing. Physically impeding the passage of federal agents, providing false information, helping employees flee the premises, refusing entry to private areas after being provided a judicial warrant specifying all of the following: the correct company name and address, properly signed and dated by a judge, including a time frame within which the search must be conducted, and with a description of the premises to be searched and a list of items or people to be seized. Those are items that could place FAB employees in legal jeopardy.
And so earlier, David mentioned a little bit about recruiting businesses into fabs, as well as I talked a little about how to become a fab. And so this is our matrix of 8 different steps that you can take and that we are holding ourselves to identify potential businesses and to get them into the fab pipeline. One being high profile and high traffic, two being looking through local business directories, three is just general research on Google, four, local media outlets, looking through our local newspapers and seeing who pops up online. Five is public transit usage. Six is observing for yourself. What businesses do you already patronize and have connections with the employees or the business owners? Seven is economic development resources. So these are local incubators or business alliances and getting in contact with them. And then lastly, as I mentioned, is social media. So Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, you name it, businesses have presence on these sites. And so creating that opportunity for outreach through those. But if you take nothing else away, we want to focus on workplaces that share these characteristics. They're high profile. When people think of your city or town, they think of this business with a public brand or presence. They're high visibility. They're visible from a road or a sidewalk that gets a lot of foot or car traffic, or they are highly visible to online audiences. And lastly, we want these businesses to share our values. These are businesses that operate in ways that exemplify or uplift our pillars of freedom, safety, justice, and joy. And so that brings us to the end of our presentation for today. We are so thankful for y'all taking the time to join us and to learn a little bit more about our FAB program. Our contact information is going to be included in a follow up email coming from the Wisconsin Council of Churches. And so we hope to be in contact and connection with you soon. We are very much looking forward to building this robust network of Fourth Amendment trained and certified businesses through Wonder. David, do you have anything else to add?
I would just like to remind everybody that with programs like this, our reach is magnified every time a new partner amplifies our work, whether that's through sharing it with other interested parties, learning how to train on this particular issue itself or others. And All in Wisconsin and the team there want to extend our special thanks to the organizations like the Wisconsin Civic Power Table, Comité Sin Fronteras, and the Wisconsin Council of Churches for being really early supporters of this vital program. Building a Wisconsin where everyone can experience freedom, safety, justice, and joy takes all of us. And so thank you. Thank you for coming to learn about this today and doing your part to make sure that our pillars are a reality for Wisconsinites from Kenosha to Superior and everywhere in between.
Thank you everyone for your time today and being here. It's such a beautiful day where I'm at in Waukesha County. I know we've had rain on and off, so appreciate now that it's sunny and possibly warm out that you're here with us this evening. As Brianna mentioned, my name is Cole Torres. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Manager with the League of Women Voters. I've been in this role since March of 2024. In this position, I advance inclusive practices and support civic engagement efforts that promote equitable participation in democracy. I was born in Chicago, Illinois, and raised there for most of my life. I moved to Wisconsin in September of 2021. And I'm a first generation college graduate with a passion for cultural awareness and community education. In addition to my professional role, I co-lead and collaborate with several pro-immigrant coalitions across Wisconsin, working on advocacy efforts related to 287G agreements and helping build community defense and rapid response networks, including collaboration with Wisconsin Safe Roads and Communities Coalition. In addition to that, just wanted to talk a little bit about the League of Women Voters. We're a nonpartisan, so we don't endorse either political candidates or we don't endorse political parties. A grassroots political organization established in 1920, and we advocate for informed and active participation in government. The League welcomes anyone and everyone. And if you're looking for civic education, or if you're just looking for more ways to influence policy through advocacy, please go ahead and check us out. We have 22 leagues within the state of Wisconsin, and currently new leagues are forming, such as in Waukesha County and Kewanee. So just wanted to talk a little bit about the league. And then now we're going to segue into Beyond Protesting, working together for something. If you give me just one moment, I'm going to go ahead and share my slides with everyone. So as I'm working to put this in present mode, Brianna, can we see my slides?
You are good.
Excellent. So I have a couple bars here. Let me just move them around. Gotta love Zoom. Here we go. Alrighty. So I provide hopefully lots of strategies on 287 agreements, how to rescind it, and I try to provide strategies that allow people with various experiences as well as various time commitments to get involved. So we do have actions that inquire a lot less time, about, medium chunk of time, and then for those who really have the bandwidth to dive deep. First, in case anyone hasn't heard, what the heck is a 287G agreement? Well, under 287G agreements, local law enforcement officers act as immigration agents. Normally, local law enforcement officers don't have authority to enforce immigration laws. But under 287G of the Immigration and Nationality Act, local officers are deputized with certain immigration enforcement powers. So in short, local law enforcement agencies are trained by ICE to perform the duties of ICE agents. So how does a community enter into 287G agreement? Well, largely it's done by police, whether it's a sheriff, a police chief, or another agency that chooses to get involved with federal immigration enforcement. So these agreements are entered directly between the county decision makers, again, usually going to be the sheriff, and ICE. So in practice, sheriffs rarely, if ever, announce that they are in discussions with ICE, and they sign the agreements without any public notice. So in Wisconsin, the agreements do not need to be approved or ratified by a county board, such as the County Board of Supervisors. And the first notice a community gets is usually when a concerned citizen notices the agreement on the list of pending or existing 287G agreements at the site that's linked right here. So it's a national site, and in the state of Wisconsin, as of 2 weeks ago that I know of, we have 20 counties with 287G agreements in the state of Wisconsin. So I won't get into the nitty-gritty, but there are three different models. One is jail enforcement model, another is the warrant service model, and the last is the task force model. They all have different capacities. None of them are great. Bottom line. So when we're talking about 287G agreements, I thought it would be helpful to understand some of the ways that these agreements hurt our communities. And while I've identified 6 in this presentation, I just want to state that this is not all encompassing, right? There are more than 6 ways in which these agreements are harmful to our communities, but these are 6 important ones that I wanted to identify. And so I really liked that the video that David and Kyle displayed talks about humanity and talks about, the dignification of a human being. And so that's why I really love immigrants' rights or human rights. So the first way in which 287G agreements hurt our communities is more deportations, right? ICE has a direct pipeline into our jails and the police departments. So local officers end up doing federal work, right? ICE's job, investigating people, issuing detainers, and starting deportation paperwork, which makes it far easier to separate families. Second, increases racial profiling. When police act as immigration agents, bias grows. There has been studies that have done this, especially in Arizona, where the first 287G agreement started. It was an experiment. Officers know an arrest can trigger deportation, so they're more likely to target Latinos and others who look or sound foreign or who are ethnically ambiguous. It reduces public safety and trust. When local law enforcement partners with ICE, immigrant and non-immigrant community members become less likely to report crimes. The silence allows crime to continue and puts more people at risk. So recognizing the danger to public safety, some agencies have chosen to withdraw from agreements to better protect their communities. So some examples of this would be if there's an immigrant who has seen something, they're a witness to a crime, they're less likely to report that crime and come forward as a witness for fear of getting in trouble, being detained, perhaps getting their status revoked. So that's some examples of how it reduces public safety and trust. Similarly, if someone who is undocumented has experienced a crime themselves, they're less likely to report it for the same fears. It's an additional burden of local safety net programs. You're essentially diverting resources that are helping the community, and it's taking away time for police officers to do that work, to do something like this, which again is a federal job. Not only that, but when a parent or a breadwinner is deported or detained, families suffer, and so do our communities economically as well. You think about child welfare, family services, and local programs who are also forced to pick up the pieces. Tax dollars are wasted. I kind of alluded to this earlier, right? ICE doesn't reimburse counties for staff time, salaries, or resources spent on immigration enforcement. That means local taxpayers foot the bill, essentially subsidizing deportations for DHS, while community priorities are put on the back burner. And then the biggest thing is it exposes your city or your county to legal liability. Local law enforcement involved in federal immigration enforcement has resulted in the violations of the constitutional rights of citizens and non-citizens alike. We have heard dozens and dozens of stories of this happening, not just in Wisconsin, but also across the nation. Cities and counties can be held liable when people are unlawfully detained on ICE's behalf, as such as ACLU's current lawsuit against a few sheriffs. One included is Marathon County. And across the country, these lawsuits have already cost local governments millions. So where do these agreements exist? This is a map as of April 14th, so about a month ago, and it includes all 20 counties. What's great is the person who created this map also color codes the counties by the by the model that that county has adopted, and it is possible to adopt more than one model. Oh, don't know how that happened. So in addition to that, I think it's really important to know the difference between judicial versus administrative warrants, right? So ICE agents carry administrative warrants, which is issued by themselves. They sign it. It does not allow for entry into one's home or private property, and it requires a low burden of proof. Individuals can be arrested if they are suspected of violating immigration laws. Judicial warrants requires a lot more paperwork and evidence, and it has to come from a judge, or on the form it may also say magistrate. It allows for entry into one's home or private property. So, as they were saying earlier, when it came to Fourth Amendment rights in businesses, in any dedicated private space in a business, as long as it's indicated as private and it says, only staff personnel, for example, then either police or ICE would need a judicial warrant to enter that private space. And it's typically related to criminal investigations. Probable cause is needed. So really quickly, this is the sample of a judicial on the left and an administrative on the right. If you look, it says United States District Court. To the right, this looks very different. U.S. Department of Homeland Security. It says warrant for arrest. And here it has to have your name and your address spelled correctly for judicial warrant. Hope these visuals are helpful. So now that we have some of that foundational knowledge and that background knowledge, I wanted to go over what you can do, right? Some ideas for action. So first, starting with your county leaders, right? Letting them know where you stand and educating them, as a lot of the times they may not even be informed as to why 287G is harmful. So let them know not to partner with ICE or to end 287G agreement that currently exists. One way to do that is contacting your county sheriff. If you aren't sure that they have a 287G agreement, there is a link in an earlier slide where you can see. Otherwise, you can ask your sheriff. And so if they don't have one, again, it's letting them know that you do not want this. And if they do have one, asking them questions as to what made you sign a 287G agreement, right? Help me understand how you think this promotes better safety in our community. So the League of Women Voters created a toolkit, and it's called Halt 287G, and it is in a later slide hyperlinked. But one hyperlink on this slide is a Talk to Your Sheriff toolkit that we found from the Worker Circle. And I actually yesterday just went to this year's training because they updated the Talk to Your Sheriff toolkit. So this is the one from last year, 2025, but the hyperlink to the toolkit constantly is getting revised, whether it's when a new county signs or there's been recensions. So it is a live document, and we will be updating with the new Talk to Your Sheriff toolkit. But what's great about this toolkit really quickly is it's a step-by-step walkthrough of how to organize a meeting with your sheriff, and strategies that have worked for advocates across the nation. In addition to that, there's a recording of the Talk to Your Sheriff webinar. So it's a really useful tool that has helped people. In addition to that, contacting your county board of supervisors. Again, although the sheriff or police chiefs are the ones to enter into a 287G agreement, the county board supervisor typically has the power of the purse, right? They typically oversee the budget of the sheriff department. let them know where you stand and figure out where they stand. And in what has worked in the past, especially one way, or I'm sorry, Palmyra, what worked so well, which is not a county, but it's the town and the village of Palmyra, was public pressure and canvassing, people going door to door and actually educating people about 287G, what it is, and again, the harms and why it doesn't make communities safer, but also how it creates friction and doesn't allow for a community, right? It's division. And through public pressures and town halls, the police chief who was thinking of signing ended up not signing the 287G agreement. And so I included resources like email template. I've also included a sample phone script and then a sample meeting agenda. So another way is to inform your community. As I mentioned, some ways can be canvassing, going door to door. As someone who is an introvert, that's something that terrifies me. But what I can do is start with my family and my friends, and then kind of once I've had these conversations with them and I realize that we share the same values, then it's like a ripple effect. Then they talk with their other family members and their friends and, their colleagues, and it goes out that way. Another avenue is sharing factual information through social media. And then another is writing a letter to the editor. And I've included links for an LTE, like a template, and I've also included a link to a guide. And another is hosting a public program or a discussion circle. For my experience with the League of Women Voters, what's been great is leagues have had webinars about 287G and various different capacities. There is one league who decided that they were going to bring the sheriff from Minneapolis and was bringing their sheriff from their local county, and it was a really great way to have both the educational output, but in addition to that, people getting to hear from experiences of law enforcement who shared the same values as them. Some other things that you can do. Review and distribute Know Your Rights resources. Getting trained for Know Your Rights. I was trained for Know Your Rights and I did train the trainer, and now I've gone and spoken to leagues and given them Know Your Rights training. You can distribute these resources in small businesses, in libraries if they allow it, right? So that's something that you can easily do. You can participate in peaceful rallies and protests, right? You can take the pledge and join the League's Unite and Rise 8.5 campaign. It's a commitment to stand in solidarity with our immigrant communities and Wisconsinites at large. And you can be part of a League in Action Circle, which focuses not only on actions and rallies, but also ways to engage in the community and build coalition and have these conversations. Making sure that you're staying informed and coming to webinars like this where you're educating yourself. And then uplift empowering materials in the stories of those directly impacted. I think that is really the humanity that sometimes breaks through to someone. You can throw logic out the window when you realize, wow, I know someone, right? And it's like I may have had in the past some conflicting feelings and stances about immigration, but knowing that my neighbor who is a hard worker, who has a family to support, who, is a great upstanding citizen, we get along so well, that this experience happened to them, that personal experience, really tends to touch people. So share resources like those found on this page with your friends, families, and community, post them to social media, or see if you can pin them in local businesses, places of worship, or your workplace, and keep information in your wallet or hand out materials to friends. And some other ways is supporting Wisconsinites with their DACA renewal fees. You can contribute to the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign's DACA Renewal Fund, and there is a link for your convenience. Some other things, you can help build a community defense network, right? So I broke down this image. You can help provide funding for legal support, or if you have the time and the skills, then you can contact a local member of the National Partnership for New Americans Legal Services Collective to see how you can support them. We the Action is another group you can support. And then establishing a community defense network, you can become an ICE hotline operator. You can become a verifier after taking the training. You can participate in mutual aid. I don't know if I mentioned this in another slide, but the best way to help locally is transportation. For those of you who may not know, in the state of Wisconsin, if you are undocumented, you cannot have a driver's license. You can't obtain one. In Illinois, you can, for example, and for I think 18 to 22 states within the United States, they do allow that, but Wisconsin isn't. So anytime someone who does not have documentation status is behind the wheel, it's an unnecessary risk that they're taking. So whether it's volunteering to take their schools or their kids to school, excuse me, volunteering to take them to any necessary medical appointments or take them to work, that's a really great way and a low lift if you have the time and the bandwidth and the resources to do that. And then some other ways. Oh, I did include that for my transportation, right? Dropping off groceries, just checking in and staying connected, tutoring students who may be too afraid to go to school, and helping teach English to people working towards their citizenship status. Some upcoming activation opportunities. Tell Congress to oppose the SAVE Act. Count every person in the census. Our current administration does not want to count every person in the census. They only want to count people who have legal status, and that would be such a detriment to funding, not only for Section 203 of the Voting Rights Act, but also local community funding. Tell Congress to stay out of schools. Tell Congress we need immigration reform like 20, 30, 40 years ago. Tell Congress to protect children and defend the right to public education so that anyone, regardless of their citizenship status, gets the right to a public education. And fight back against fear. Tell state education leaders protect students from retaliation for peaceful protest. And then prioritize areas to recruit additional verifiers. These are the geographic regions within the state of Wisconsin that need additional support. Western Wisconsin, all 20 counties that have a 287G agreement, Milwaukee, Madison, and Green Bay. This is a little bit older. I had originally created this slide about a month ago, but news updates. When TSA was assisting in airports, there was a story of TSA who tipped off ICE agents. A mother and her daughter were detained. Over 4,400 people have been illegally detained. Again, that was as of a month ago. An Afghan asylum seeker who fought alongside U.S. dies in ICE custody. Pets. I think most of us have such a special place for pets and sometimes don't think about all of the animals left behind when their owners are deported and them not understanding why they're going lengths of time and being separated from their loved ones, but also the financial resources that it takes and trying to place them. So pets have unfortunately felt a lot of this as well. And then from Flock to ICE, Flock shares information with ICE, which is not great. And then there is a really powerful letter from healthcare workers and public health practitioners on child health and safety in detention systems. Hegseth ramps up pressure on defense civilians to deploy for immigration enforcement. So to sign up as ICE agents. But then I want to cover some quick highlights, right? Some things that have been working, I think, due to public pressure. Kristi Noem removed as head of DHS. Whistleblower testimony from former DHS attorney Ryan Schwenk. Growing number of community-based rapid response networks, or AKA community defense networks. Wisconsin attorneys helping immigrants despite ICE dispute, excuse me, ICE in court. Federal judge issues final notice to Trump administration over unlawful jailings of immigrants in West Virginia. Pro-Palestinian protester was released who had been detained in Texas for more than a year but never charged with a crime. And then some agreements that were halted or rescinded were in Palmyra, Eagle, and Ozaki County. I think it's important to share the wins. And then some important dates. We already had May Day. We had August 11th, the fall primary, and then November 3rd, the fall general election. I really want to stress that for this general election in the fall, all Wisconsin sheriffs are up for re-election this year. So it's important to invite them to candidate forums and try to decipher where they stand on 287G agreements and getting maybe opponents, if they're running unopposed, who support your values to run, encourage them to run for office. So that is all I have for y'all. And then some trustworthy organizations that support our immigrant neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Cole. So we have a few questions. I'm gonna try to like group some together. One is about the knowledge of 287G, like that the question is like people may not know that their local government is participating. And then I wonder if you could talk about that, but also just like the process of how some folks in Wisconsin have been tracking these agreements. And then like what's the state of agreements now? Are more people signing them or is progress halted or what's happening?
Great question. The easiest answer for me to tackle right away is your last question is, are more 287G agreements being signed? And we're seeing a trend uptick in the state of Wisconsin. Nationally, as I'm in coalitions that are also tracking 287G agreements, we're also seeing some states where, yes, 287G agreements are being signed and in plethora. And then we're also seeing some states where they're making it mandatory for police officials to work with ICE. On the reciprocating end, we're also seeing pushback. And so, an example, in the state of Illinois, police officers cannot work with ICE for 287G agreements. And so it really has to do with public policy. Some ways too, in terms of making sure that we get pushback, is trying to pursue what can your county board of supervisor do in terms of pushing policy, right? We've seen in Milwaukee that there are stipulations where there are certain spaces where police can assist in enforcing 287G. I forget what your other two questions are.
Just if you could talk a little bit about the progress. So like you shared the map from BDI, like how are we tracking this? How do we know? And like
Yes.
is it all transparent?
So, in terms of transparency, the way to get up-to-date information on who has signed 287G is in one of my slides, I linked, or it says click here on this site, and I David or Kyle help me, but I think immigration on their website they track. So I should have put a screenshot where you can see a 287G agreements in any state. So that's the short answer of how to track. They're pretty quick to put on and update their website when they sign a 287G agreement. They're a lot slower to take it off.
When they've been
Rescinded.
rescinded. Yes.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. That's been the trend.
I know
Um,
one of the things people have also said is this is where we need all of you. People like keep an eye on what's happening in your local level. Local people have the pulse on their local communities. Build those
yep.
relationships with your sheriffs. Be aware of what's happening on your county boards, that sort of thing, so that then you can help inform people like Cole or all these people who are kind of doing this work statewide, and we can be in coalition together.
Yes, most definitely.
Do you want to speak really briefly about flock cameras? You mentioned it, and there's a question here about just what flock cameras are and their role in immigration and pulling over cars.
Yes, most definitely. Some great questions there in terms of Flock. So Flock and other companies like Paradigm, they're basically tracking civilians. So when this happened recently in LA, where there were drones tracking license plates readers, right? So we're all being tracked. And this was a big issue in Milwaukee where they pushed back and ended their contract with Flock. So not only is Flock tracking license plates, but also if you are not masked, right? There's this app that police officers as well as ICE agents use where it shows your picture and it most likely will bring up like who you are. And there's also been times where people have been, just verbally intimidated, saying, I now know who you are. I have your information, with using this technology.
And I know there's been action. We have some clergy in our network who've been showing up at their county board meetings to speak about Flock and say, like, we don't want this in our community. And so this is
Very
another
important.
place of organizing along with 287G to say, find out if your community has Flock cameras and then encourage whoever it may be. Sometimes, I mean, I know universities have them, counties, police, whoever's kind of funding this to say, we don't want this contract in our community.
Yeah, and just really quickly talking about, Flock, I want to just share some information about how these systems are not ready to be used by any agency. And the biggest reason why is because the test subjects tend to be white people. There aren't enough test subjects on people of color. Whether that's Black, Asian, Latino, they're often misidentified. Again, because they're not using people of these demographics as their test subjects. And so I just wanted to point that out, why that is so problematic, as well as, there are lawsuits arguing that it invades our privacy. So just want to say there's been lots of instances of research of misidentification, especially in people of color. So very problematic. These are not very reliable.
Thank you, Cole. I mean, thank you
Absolutely.
for all this information. And we're going to be sending out, I believe, your slides after
Yeah.
this. And I encourage you all to kind of get involved. We've been trying to organize some work at the council amongst congregations and provide support and working with Cole. And we are happy. And she's, I'm sure, happy to help resource you if this is an action you want to take in your local communities. So now we're going to go to our final speaker, Pastor Marilyn, who is the co-executive director of Wisdom and has an incredible bio of all the great work she's been doing around the state. And so I'm going to pass it over to you to talk a little bit about what it looks like to take action in your communities.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'll invite Cole to take her documents down. Bree? Okay, there we go. All right. Good evening, everyone. So, Brianna, do we end at 8 o'clock? I need to do a time check because
that'd be great. We'll shoot for
okay.
that if that's
right. So, so you all have to invite me back because we really don't have time to cover all of what I was going to share tonight. But the issue that I wanted to address with everybody and bring up is something that we often forget and do not think about the importance in our justice work. And that is our actions to fight white supremacy culture in our work. And I'm talking about us fighting this in our personal lives, in our communal lives, our institutional lives, as well as our systemic lives. So this is something we need to be addressing at every level of our work. And we often don't think about it, or we put it on the back burner and we act like it really doesn't matter. So this is what I want to call you to action to today. This is probably one of the issues that, has been most difficult, because in our society, this is how we've learned to function. We've learned to function in a very segregated, siloed ways from one another. So we don't do what we need to do to build beloved community. So I want to just share with you, in the summer of 2024, Micah launched what we call the We All Belong campaign. So our three focuses for the work are to protect democracy, reject white Christian nationalism, and to build beloved community. We spent the bulk of our time on the first two of those legs, and we're trying to now focus on building beloved community. So in December of 2025, a number of us attended the Gamaliel Race and Power Summit, and we heard Dr. John Powell, the director of the Othering and Belonging Institute at UW-Berkeley. We read his book, The Power of Bridging, How to Build a World Where We All Belong, and we invited him to speak to us and lead us in a workshop to help us address building beloved community. And I highly recommend that you get and read the book. So the book is about 4 key concepts paired in tension with each other: belonging and bridging, and othering and breaking. So othering is seeing people not only as different, but as less than deserving and not of equal dignity to the insider group. Breaking is othering in action. When we engage in breaking, we deny the stories, the complexities, and even sometimes the humanity of those we consider other. Breaking is the practice that undergirds othering. He offers 2 solutions to othering and breaking: belonging and bridging. So belonging means giving dignity to all, and that every person is seen for who she, he, or they are. And we need to be acknowledged as belonging, and we acknowledge the belonging of others. That's what builds beloved community. Bridging is both a practice and a position. We live in a world where fear is more visible than love or hope. So we have to be willing to close the distances between us. We have to learn to walk toward one another rather than away from one another. This work calls for vulnerability, which is hard for a lot of us. Dr. Powell says the problem of the 21st century is the problem of othering. We have all learned to categorize other humans and ascribe meaning and value to those categories. And he states that he is consciously playing off of the work of W.E.B. Du Bois, who declared over 100 years ago that the problem of the 20th century is the problem of the color line. 40 years after Du Bois wrote these words, the Swedish scholar Gunnar Myrdal characterized the race problem in the United States as a great dilemma that, if it is not resolved, threatens the ultimate success of our democratic experiment. And Dr. Powell said, indeed, as I write these words, it seems that we may be abandoning our grand experience. We are now in the 21st century, And the color line is still a central problem for us in our society. Our democracy is in trouble. Racism is an expression of othering. And we're all familiar with the problem. So let's talk a little bit about a few things that we can do to bridge and belong. So one of the ways of bridging that Dr. Powell suggests is telling and listening to each other's stories. Everyone's story matters. And we all carry multiple stories and multiple layers of ourselves in the world. There is power in story. There is meaning in story. There is truth in story. Knowing people's stories can be transformative, and it gives us an opportunity to build relationships, which lead us to building beloved community. It's a place to start and a place to continue growing if you are willing. If you haven't already seen it, I encourage you to watch the TED Talk by Nigerian author Chimamanda Adichie. It's called The Danger of a Single Story. In it, she gives some good examples of single stories and breaks down why single stories are dangerous to human beings. We have to unlearn the single stories we have been told and replace them with the many stories of truth and beauty that come from a multitude of stories. And for some of us, it means getting out of our comfort zone. I know a lot of people start with book clubs, and that's a great way to get started. If you don't have a lot of diversity near you, read the stories of other people from their viewpoint, their culture, how they see the world, so that you begin to learn and understand that there's many ways to be in the world. Secondly, I want to invite you to read an article that you're going to receive. Brianna's going to send this out. It's called White Supremacy Culture by Dr. Tema Okun. And I want to encourage each one of you to examine yourself, examine your justice work, and examine your organization for ways in which you may be upholding white supremacy culture. And then do the work to dismantle what you are practicing and build something new and life-giving for everybody. Let's be clear that white supremacy culture is on a continuum from the language that devalues people of color, biases, prejudice, stereotypes, microaggressions, all of those things, all the way over to the extreme of the Proud Boys, the Ku Klux Klan, white Christian nationalism. All of those things are on the continuum of white supremacy. So we have to deal with all of this. In her article, she gives some characteristics of white supremacy culture that can show up in our organizations and our work. So here's some of the things that she talks about. Perfectionism, a sense of urgency, defensiveness, quantity over quality, worship of the written word, only one right way to do things, paternalism, either or thinking. And there's more characteristics in her article. She does a very helpful job of giving examples of what this behavior looks like. And then she gives what she calls antidotes or ways to change this way of operating. So I asked Brianna to pull up one example. I'm going to use the example of worship of the written word. So what she does is she gives kind of a description of what it looks like And then she gives examples of antidotes, things that you can do to change this kind of behavior. So, worship of the written word. So if it's not in a memo, it doesn't exist. All right. The organization does not take into account or evaluate other ways in which information gets shared. So, especially when you're dealing with a number of people of color, traditions and cultures, they center on oral traditions, not written traditions. And if you only do things one way, you only get one set of results or ways of responding. Those with strong documentation and writing skills are more highly valued in organizations. Even in organizations where the ability to relate to others is key to the mission. So this kind of becomes the standard, in other words. And if people can't meet that standard, and we know we're living in a nation where education is not equitable. Everybody doesn't get the same privilege and opportunity to get a high school diploma or a college degree. So if the written word is the standard that we're using, we often end up leaving a lot of people out. And just by way of example, we had some flyers recently for some of the political candidates. And I brought to someone's attention that if this is what we're handing out to people, we're leaving out a lot of people because we have stuff that's written up at levels way up here, and the average person's reading skills are way down here. Excuse me. And then her antidotes that she offers are: take the time to analyze how people inside and outside the organization get and share information. Figure out which things need to be written down and come up with alternative ways to document what is happening. Work to recognize the contributions and skills that every person brings to the organization. For example, the ability to build relationships with those who are important to the organization's mission. Make sure anything written can be clearly understood. And then so on and so forth. So, okay, Granny, you can take it down. But she gives a whole list of these. And what I want to encourage you all to do is to take the document, read it yourself personally, read it among you and your organizations and institutions, and then really look at yourselves and examine how you may be upholding white supremacy culture. Because I will tell you, as a person of color who has been in these organizations for most of my life, over 60 years, it is very difficult for many of us to come in and stay, because these ways of being are prevalent, and a lot of people just don't feel that they are welcome or that they belong. So here's an opportunity for action. And that's my call to action for you all tonight.
Thank you, Pastor Marilyn.
You're welcome.
Someone asked, do we need a flyer for an event to happen? No, that is what I hear. I think I just think that when you've got things built in deep relationship, right? You can say,
well,
hey,
it's funny. Yeah, somebody asked that question. Do we need a flyer for an event to happen? Well, it's so funny because we're always dealing with multiple layers of people. So yes, you need a flyer. You need a flyer. You got to say it. You got to share it. You got to call people. I mean, every way that you can get the point across is what we're saying. You have to do that.
So a flyer plus.
Yes, a flyer plus. Yes, you'll get the article. Brianna's going to send it to you. So I really encourage you all to read it, and everything matters, and so anything we can do to reverse how racism is is alive and well and really coming back in full force in our society. We have to fight this. We have to fight this. And remember, we won't see the end of it, but we're doing this for the 7 generations to come. So everything that we do matters today for everybody that's coming behind us, including for ourselves. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Pastor Marilyn. And thank you to Cole, and thank you to Kyle and David for talking to us tonight. There's a lot going on, and there are many ways to engage. I was on a call with some folks earlier today who are talking about how do they organize at their county board levels. And so the faith community is present and active and doing things, sometimes working through Wisdom, which is Pastor Marilyn's organization. Jonah and Esther have been really big. So there's a lot going on. We thank you all for engaging. Be in touch with Wisconsin Faith Voices for Justice, Wisconsin Council of Churches, and Wisdom, and the Interfaith Conference of Greater Milwaukee. Our newsletters are full of resources. There is so much going on, and we rely on you to also share with us, the staff and the people kind of organizing. We want to hear what you're doing so we can all be collaborating together. So thank you all. I appreciate this. The call to action is to go do something, go build some relationships, go learn someone's story and listen to it and ask how you can engage. Go talk to your local coffee shop, go talk to your sheriff, and it's in relationship that we can begin to make changes. So thank you so much.